All right, so we're talking about how to maximize your podcast appearance. When you're on a podcast and you want to make sure that you're getting every ounce of value from that appearance so that you can be found and you can create thought leadership and you can look like the authority in your niche. And so a lot of times when I bring people onto my podcast, they're always asking me questions, hey, how do I take this podcast and make it work for me? So here's some tips that I think you should make sure that when you're on a podcast, the podcast hosts are asking you, making sure that you're using it so that you can get found easier, SEO wise. And so we'll start there, right? So when I'm thinking about an episode, when I bring somebody in, the first thing I think about is, what's the hook for this episode going to be? And the hook is something that should speak to the people that you help. So for instance, Cannon over here, San Antonio-based videographer. He works with attorneys, real estate, entrepreneurs, visionaries, people like that. So if I brought Cannon onto my show, then the SEO specific headline that I would make for Cannon would probably be around how he helps entrepreneurs and make it a nice hook. So I would say, 5 things that you need to know as a business owner before you start creating video for your business. Or something like that. Something that like, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. Especially if I am looking to help people, then that's the thing that I'm going to think about as the hook. There's a really good book. It's called How to Write Copy That Sells. Incredible book. He has this acronym called PASTOR. And every time I ask my clients, or not clients, but podcast guests, questions, I try to frame it around this acronym, and I'll take you through the acronym right now. So P stands for people, problem, and pain. So I'm always asking my clients, who are the people that you help? Talk to me about your customer avatar, your buyer persona, right? Who are the people that you help? And then what are the problems that they have, right? For Cannon, it would be, Cannon, who are the people that you help? Entrepreneurs, attorneys, visionaries, real estate, the whole nine. Talk to me about some of the problems that they have. Well, some of the problems could be they need to be found online. They need to be considered the authority in their brand. They need to increase their top line revenue. They need to create credibility and trust. They need to stay top of mind. They need to have content to put on their social media. They need to have content that they can send on their email. So these are all problems and pain points that his customer persona has. And so we talk about their pain, we talk about their problems. So that's P in the PASTOR. A is amplification. So what happens, Cannon, when somebody doesn't take action, right? What happens if they don't decide they want to do video? What happens if they procrastinate and they don't decide quickly that they are losing out on money as a result of not being found online? And so he can come in and he can talk about the amplification, right? How are we amplifying that pain? Well, if they don't make the decision to do video, right? Cannon, what happens? What happens if people don't amplify their pain when it comes to video? You're muted.
They're going to be lost in the shuffle of how crazy social media is. No one's going to know.
Yeah, a lot of business owners are probably trying to pick images and graphics and things like that, and it's just like, okay, that's great. You know what I mean? And that's awesome. But like, if you really want to be found online, especially with Google now prioritizing video, if you guys aren't using video to establish brand authority and trust and credibility, you're missing out. And so somebody like Cannon will come in and say, hey, look, if you continue to not create content, you're going to be left behind by your competitors. You're eventually going to die as a company, because if you're not growing, you're dying. And so if your only business or marketing strategy is referrals, then you are absolutely 100% going to fail eventually. Like, it is going to happen to you. If you don't consider marketing and video content creation and you're not doing that stuff, then eventually your business will die, because that's where we're at now, and it's just going to get more and more in the future. So that's how we're amplifying that pain. And then we're rolling into stories. Let's talk about the stories of some people that you helped. Well, there's an attorney that we helped, and we started doing their content, and then 6 months later, their cases started to increase. Their authority, when it came down to conversion, they started converting a lot better because now they're a trusted brand, right? So that's just one story. And then the transformation. What is so PAST? T is the transformation. What's a transformation that your clients have gone through as a result of working with you? Well, as a result of working with us, they're easily found online. Their SEO has gone up. Their YouTube channel has gone up. They have more engagement on social media. They have more subscribers, more followers. Their top line revenue has increased, right? So all of those things go into the transformation, right? And that way, when we're watching the video, we can go, okay, this video I can use completely in the podcast as an ad. And you're seeing it now. A lot of these businesses are using podcasts as ads for their business. So you can use potentially, like when people are on my podcast, they can use their podcast episodes as an ad, or you can chop it up and use each of those little mini bits as an ad. So PAST is a transformation. O is the offer, right? What is the offer? How do we work with you? What is your flagship offer? And try not to give me like a menu of items. Try to give me one thing that you're known for. Once they're in your ecosystem, then you can upsell them. But don't try to force feed somebody all of your information in one go, because confused people don't buy. So one thing, the flagship offer, how do they work with you? Right? And then roll into the R, which is the call to action, the resolve, right? What is the call to action? Do you want them to call you? Do you want them to visit the website? Do you want them to sign up on one of your landing pages? Do you want them to access your lead magnet? Do you want them to read your book? What is it that you want them to do? So pastor, person, problem, pain. A is amplification. S is story. T is transformation. O is your offer. R is the resolve, your call to action. So when you guys are thinking about how to maximize your appearance on a podcast, you want to make sure that you're thinking in the future, right? What is the purpose of this podcast? How am I adding value? How am I helping somebody? How am I giving them a tip, a trick, something that you learned, maybe a struggle that you went through that brought you on the other side, and now you're, that epiphany that you had, as to why you even started the business in the first place. And then from there, you can go, okay, yeah, this was the epiphany I had. This is what my life was like before, had the epiphany, then I started to change, and now as a result, here's where I am, right? So stories are an amazing. Yep.
I do think every single one of those points could be used as an opportunity to help people. Like, you can use the amplification for pain to really dig into, like, no, I actually believe that if you don't, like, it's not just to get the sale. Like, if you don't do this, your life genuinely will be worse. And you can speak from more of a genuine place than just, like, I'm just trying to close a deal. And
yeah.
That's more helpful. And I think, again, every single one of those could be, like you had said, that tip or that trick or that story that can genuinely help people.
Yeah, I mean, 1,000%. And here's a little quick tip for you. If you take that podcast episode and you cut it up into clips, right? So if you did the P and the A and the S and the T and the O and the R, like those are its own little segments, you can take that entire piece and break it up into bits, and each bit could be an email nurture sequence in your customer journey, from when somebody comes in as a prospect to becoming a client. A lot of people are like, oh, I got to write copy that's going to convince somebody that they should work with me. But I'm like, what's it like working with you? Right? Tell me what the process is. Tell me what the journey is. And so you can take that whole process, cut it up into bits, and drip it, right? Through that prospect journey from when a prospect is like on the fence to working with you. You can drop it in these little bite-sized pieces and send it to your prospects through email. I love text messages. Can throw it into YouTube and then have a nice little thumbnail. And it just, I mean, if you are really looking at trying to convert, maybe you get a lot of leads that are coming in, but the sales cycle is really long. I would recommend making sure that you take these clips and stay top of mind in a way where it's not so pushy. I know a lot of people are always like, Cannon, I'm just following up. Hey, Cannon, I'm following up. I'm following up, Cannon. You know, as per our last email, instead of actually focus on giving the value. So take that concept, chop it up, and now you have several videos that you can send that are high quality of somebody interviewing you on a podcast on how you help people, right? So if you're looking to convert prospects into clients, I would absolutely use your podcast, that podcast episode, as a way to get people across the finish line. So those are the ways that before you get on the podcast, you want to make sure that that's the mindset, that's the mind frame, is how am I building value? How can I share a story that can create impact, that can create change in somebody? And so you use that. Once you finish the episode, that's where the work comes in, because you don't want to just post it, right? Obviously, post the entire episode, share it, but use that podcast for like a week. I would post about that podcast, you being on a podcast, every single day, if not once or twice or maybe even 3 times per day, talking about different things that you're speaking about within that podcast in order to hype everybody up about a week before that podcast episode comes out. And so watch the episode and go, okay, I spoke about this. So you can create these nice little trailers in content form all the way up until the podcast comes out, where you talk about, and you just give them little insights about what you're talking about. Hey guys, I'm super excited. My podcast is coming out on Friday. We're talking about this specific thing, right? Tune in. It's going to be on Spotify, Apple Music, yada, 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 with a nice little thumbnail, you know?
I know that some of these platforms that let you do these podcast episodes a lot of AI is being integrated, and the AI will read the transcript of the podcast and will give you key takeaways for the podcast, so you could very easily turn that into those quick tweets or build little conversation points like, hey, I've got this episode coming up. That way you absolutely should listen to the podcast again and refamiliarize yourself, but at least there you have a starting place of, oh, okay, I did cover this. Let's create a very short content piece to bump that up.
100%. 100%. Don't squander an opportunity to really maximize your appearance on a podcast. One, because somebody's taking their time to interview you. So immediately when somebody's interviewing you, you're already getting the authority, right? Like that the podcast host is giving you the authority by interviewing you and giving them the time, right? And as you grow your personal brand, the higher caliber podcasts that you can be on, and so it's going to definitely help you with your messaging. It's going to definitely help you with your branding, definitely help you with engagement and staying top of mind. It's going to help with, leads coming through and how to help people and the whole nine. So don't squander that opportunity. And here's something else. If you've been on a podcast in the past and you haven't really done anything with that podcast episode, rehash it. right? People don't know when you recorded that episode, so you can bring it back, right? Cut up, take that episode, cut up some pieces and start using that as content on your social media. It's so easy to do these days. I think people are more concerned with the imposter syndrome than they are with the actual tactical reasons as to how to use a podcast, because they're too concerned with how they look and the judgment and all of that. And I'm more concerned with how can I take all of the content that I'm creating and maximize it to a point where I can use it not only to position me as the thought leader, but increase my top line revenue and increase the impact, right? Questions? Kanan? Does anybody ever call you Kanan?
Oh yeah, I have a client who calls me Kanananan.
Kanananan?
But I answer to it.
That's awesome. So yeah, I just wanted to keep this brief. It doesn't need to be a long video. I just wanted to make sure that you guys, if you're going to be on my podcast or if you're going to be on a podcast anywhere, that you keep those things in mind. That way, when you are on there, you're maximizing maximizing and optimization is key here, right? You can take something from 0 to 60 pretty easily. It's the 90 to 100. And I always talk to a friend of mine, Steve Fantasia. Shout out to Steve. He's always talking about the optimization angle, right? It's the little things. It's the little things, the details, the crossing the T's and dotting the I's that really take it from here just like to there. Because like 90 to 100 is massive, and nobody's really thinking about that. They're just thinking about, I'm just going to get it out. And I'm like, no, let's squeeze it, right? Like let's maximize that thing to a point where, when you get on a Zoom call with me, you've seen my video, my trailer, right? Pop up in the Zoom room. Like, so when people, before they come on a Zoom call with me, in the Zoom room, I put my content into client's trailer that I did, sort of like an action movie. But before they come into my room, they have a video that they're watching. So that's just one of these 90 to 100 things that really make the difference. So if you're going to be on a podcast, don't squander the opportunity. Do all of these things that I'm telling you to do. Pastor, post 2 to 3 times a day up until it comes out. And then when it comes out, send it across all platforms. Make sure you're putting it on your email list, and just really like cranking it out. Because like that could be the jumping off point for you in terms of content creation too. I know maybe you hadn't thought about creating content, maybe you hadn't thought about doing podcasts, and then you get invited to a podcast and all of a sudden it jump starts this whole thing for you. And I've seen that happen time and time again. So if it does happen, just use that as a springboard and really take all of it and just maximize that entire podcast.